Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our March 25th Executive Forum. I want to welcome everyone. Thank you all for attending. We have over 300 attendees this morning, so a great crowd, and really looking forward to a robust and a lively discussion of this issue. My remarks today at the beginning of this presentation are not really a speech. My goal really is to engage in a conversation that includes the AIM membership, our board of directors, and our guests about an AIM initiative that we are making public for the first time today. It's called AIM Business Connect. And this effort arises out of the commitments that this organization made in the summer of 2020 in response to the horrible murders and crimes committed around the country and the significant economic inequities that have been documented in multiple studies. In our statement then in June, which was entitled, "The World of Tomorrow Cannot Look Like the World of Today," we outlined 9 commitments that we made in the hopes of improving society. Today, we are raising awareness of the action step that is a direct response to our commitment, which declared we will establish a formal program to encourage our members to be intentional in supporting businesses owned and operated by people of color. Over the many months from June of 2020 until today, we have had meaningful conversations with our board, our members, and our partners. We listened first before taking action. We wanted to design a system that reflects our commitments and reflects who AIM is as an association of Massachusetts employers. And we continue to widen that audience, learning from each new conversation and adding to our initiative. Here are the guiding principles that we initially adopted. Walk before we run, partner, do not compete, and good work done quietly. The initiative is part of AIM's diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy, which we began in late 2018 and into early 2019. I want to publicly acknowledge the AIM DE&I committee co-chaired by Donna Latson-Gittins and Greg Bisconi, our consultant, who is herself a minority business enterprise and a proud AIM member, Juliet Mayers from Inspiration Zone. In fact, the entire board and membership, I want to thank them for embracing this work as central to AIM's mission. To build ABC, AIM worked with our members, outside advisors and advocates, and partners to create a vision for how to make this happen. We formed an internal task force co-led by Karen Wallace and Chris Keeley, with Reed Tomahara serving as our project manager. And they did that by evaluating the concepts to guide us going forward as we make the initiative public and expand it in the months ahead. The pilot ran this past fall and into Q1 of this year, and we are now entering a more public phase of our efforts. We are calling this AIM Business Connect because its goal is to connect minority-owned and run businesses with companies that want to diversify their purchasing spend. And although initially focused on Black and Brown-led and owned businesses, we will expand to connect companies with each other. And this name, AIM Business Connect, will expand as we expand to serve a broader group of our member companies, women-owned, LGBTQ, veterans, disabled, all communities. And make no mistake, this is hard work, and we're still learning. Let me briefly describe how we intend this to work. And the hint is in the title, Connect. One of the most important things that AIM does for its members is connect them with the resources and the information that they need to succeed. In ABC, we are specifically connecting MBEs to opportunities with our members who are committed to diversity and to opportunity. We are specifically interested in smaller sized businesses connecting with each other. The key to this working is that we at AIM can connect you to the right person within each of our member companies. It could be the CEO, it could be the owner, it could be the purchasing department of companies interested in expanding and diversifying their supply spend. AIM has cultivated a list of potential participants as buyers of products and services and sellers within the AIM Business Connect program. The latter are certified Black and Brown owned or led businesses, and the buyers are AIM member companies who agree to the following. They will maintain a strong and active commitment to minority business development and diversifying their supplier spend. They will bring legitimate opportunities over the next 12 months that enable MBEs to fairly compete for the business. They agree to connect with those MBEs and provide access to the company's decision maker in the procurement chain. And they agree to track and measure results. AIM first developed a robust partnership with the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council to help us identify potential participants and to cultivate lists of buyers and sellers. We look to partner with other organizations as well. BECMA, Amplify Latinx, the City of Boston, the Massachusetts Supplier Diversity Office, and the Economic Development Council of Western Mass, just to name a few of our partners and potential partners, many of whom are with us at this morning's event and have helped to publicize this event. We have much work to do, and we need your continued support and your continued advice. So toward that end, I'd like to invite three members of our panel to give reaction. First, I'd like to introduce Marianne Lancaster, who's the president and owner of Lancaster Packaging. Marianne founded the company out of her home in 1989 as a minority woman-owned organization specializing in mil-spec anti-static bags. Today, the company has grown and now occupies 14,000 square feet in Hudson, Massachusetts, and provides national distribution of packaging, industrial supply, and supply chain services. Building on over 30 years of experience as a distribution management industry, Marianne's strategic business plan took her company to the next level by offering an integrated supply and service solution. Lancaster Packaging has been recognized as an outstanding diverse small business. And over the past 12 years, Marianne has been listed on the Boston Globe's top 100 women-led businesses in Massachusetts. I am most grateful that Lancaster Packaging is an AIM member company and that Marianne is a member of the board, the DE&I committee, and a member of the executive committee. She was also a member of the steering committee that helped us to shape the ABC program. My question, and I will ask each of the panelists this question, Marianne, what's your overall reaction to the offering as outlined this morning?
Good morning, everyone. So obviously being involved in creating the Connection program has been amazing. I think for me, being a diverse supplier in Massachusetts for 33 years, I've seen many iterations of programs, of corporations, and I've seen successes and failures. And I really do think that the strategy that we have is going to succeed because we are at a level, I still always say that we're still at the beginning after so many years. It's going to take one organization one corporation working with one diverse supplier at a time, and making sure that every step of the way there's a strategy to succeed and have milestones, because you can't just put folks in a room and hope that something happens. And I'm excited that so many organizations are a part of it, because we're building a community to work on and solve these issues.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Now I'd like to invite Quincy Miller, who's the Vice Chair and President of Eastern Bank. Another AIM member company, by the way. Eastern is a full-service commercial and retail bank with 23 billion in total assets and over 110 banking and insurance locations serving Eastern Mass, Southern and coastal New Hampshire and Rhode Island. Quincy spends his time focused on helping lead the overall strategic direction of Eastern, which has served its customers, colleagues, and communities for over 200 years. Quincy is committed to supporting the communities where he lives and works with a focus on equity and youth. He is a founding member of the new Commonwealth Racial Equity and Social Justice Fund. He also serves on many boards and has been repeatedly recognized for his leadership. I want to thank Quincy in particular for sharing his time with our ABC team to discuss the best way to position the effort for success based on his experience at Eastern. Same question, Quincy, overall reaction to the offering as outlined this morning.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks, John, and the AIM team for having me here today. Most importantly, what I'm excited about, I guess my overall reaction, John, starts with your introduction that there's over 300 people here today to hear this message. Because I think, as Mary Ann has said, we need action, right? As we've talked about, there's been a lot of opportunities throughout the years, but there's a lot of intentionality with AIM in terms of how to make this a success and how to partner with people, with businesses who are looking for opportunities, diverse businesses who are looking for opportunities, and businesses that want to do the right thing and support this idea of supplier diversity, but need help with greater connections, getting to know people, having referrals from other businesses. And so I'm really excited about the work that AIM is setting out here and look forward to sharing some ideas with you all.
Thanks, Quincy. And finally, and then when we're through with this, we'll have a broader series of questions with the panelists and guests from the audience. But I'd like to invite Betty Francisco, who's the CEO and co-founder of the Boston Impact Initiative and Amplify Latinx. Betty is a business executive, impact investor, and community leader. She's known as a powerful convener and change maker, unapologetic about creating visibility for Latinx and POC leaders. The Boston Business Journal named Betty as one of the 2020 Power 50. Extraordinary year, extraordinary people. Boston Magazine named her as one of the 100 most influential people in Boston. Betty's currently the CEO of the Boston Impact Initiative, a social impact investment fund that invests to close the racial wealth divide in Eastern Massachusetts. She's also the co-founder of Amplify Latinx, a social venture that is building Latinx economic and political power by significantly increasing civic engagement, economic opportunity, and leadership representation in Massachusetts. Previously, Betty was the general counsel at Compass Working Capital, another AIM member company, by the way, where she oversaw the organization's legal affairs, compliance, and risk management. She serves on several boards and has been recognized in several publications for her leadership and her influence. So Betty, same question, overall reaction, and then we'll start rocking and rolling with the guests.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many friends here today, and John and the AIM team appreciate you launching this program. As we've talked in the past, this is one of the top issues for so many of the entrepreneurs that I work with, both at Boston Impact Initiative and at Amplify Latinx. We know that some of the best ways to scale a business after you have access to capital is having access to networks and to contracting opportunities. And it's those contracting opportunities often that are reliant on deep relationships in your community with influencers. And that's typically what our entrepreneurs lack. Many of them don't have exposure to larger corporations, don't have the deep friends and family network, and so it's a challenge to get in front of the right individuals to pursue these contracting opportunities. So I appreciate that AIM is launching this effort. What I'm excited about in particular is I know that you took the time to get to know some of the challenges of the smaller businesses, those MBEs that you're looking to connect. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes, and looking for ways in which we can resolve some of those challenges and remove some of the barriers so that they could effectively contract with larger corporations. I also appreciate something you said about focusing first on connecting smaller businesses to other smaller businesses. We foster those relationships within our own portfolio. Our companies are contracting with each other, and that helps to build capacity for them so that they in turn could get access to larger contracts. So I think helping to build that experience, capacity is really important. And then the last thing I want to highlight that you mentioned is it is critical to have transparency of these efforts, to track results, and to set goals. So I'm really looking forward to how that plays out. I have said that AIM is in a perfect place to be able to guide its members on how to do this work in the best way and in a way that's going to yield really positive results for our Massachusetts economy. So thank you, John.
Thanks, Betty. And not to put anyone on the spot, but one of the things I learned early on from Marianne is, how to correctly measure success, right? And so as we look at this program, there are 2 or 3 measures that I think are appropriate, and I'd love to get a reaction from the panel. One obviously is you're able to enter into a contract to do business, right? That's pretty simple, straightforward. And we should talk a little bit about, what those contracts should look like. I think sometimes businesses think they have to be huge contracts, and they don't. They can be very simple, straightforward things. But the other measure of success is that we're able to establish a connection. And the connection may not pay off in a contract immediately, but it does pay off in the long run if you're able to continue to have a dialogue with the right people inside the companies where you're hoping to establish a relationship. So Marianne, I know I stole everything you just told me, so there's not much to react to, but I'm just curious if you could share some of your experiences in the pilot program.
Oh, definitely. And also, I think that it's, what is success? You're not going to walk into an organization, diverse or not, and just have business overnight. Having a true connection and not just, meeting someone, a buyer for the first time, and you introduce each other and then you're done and they say, oh, we've got a bid going out in 2 years, talk to you then. So when we mean meaningful connections, and I am in the program, let me just say first off, I'm in it and working on it at the same time. And I've got 2 amazing connections already so far. And I will name the organizations because I look at them as a success. We have not started doing business yet, but that's not, for me, what the measurement is yet. So my 2 connections are the Chase Corporation and Joseph Abood, and how they approached it is where the success lies. Looking at what Lancaster offers, but more so, what is the value that Lancaster can bring? And that began with learning about what we do, not just looking at a line card. With Chase organization, I've had 4 meetings in 2 months, and those meetings are valuable in looking at creating a strategic plan of how we transition in. So it is a lot of work, which John stated at the beginning, but the success is you have to do the work to see if there's going to be value on both sides. And often it may even mean that your organization is going to introduce you to one of their suppliers, but again, not a second tier program, get together in a room and you're done. The work has to continue on forward. And I see that happening. And it's very exciting.
Thanks, Marianne. I know that Peter Hurst is in the audience. I saw him give greetings a moment ago. I was wondering, Peter, if you would perhaps unmute yourself and share any observations that you might have. Peter has become a trusted advisor of mine and of the entire organization. And a lot of the principles that we're trying to follow, we learned from him and from GNE. So Peter, if you're out there, if not, I'll pretend to be you if you want.
Good morning, John. Good morning, everyone. I'm Peter Hurst, as John indicated, the president of the Greater New England Minority Supply Development Council. I'd like to make 3 observations. First, I think the why we haven't talked about, and the why is probably the most important thing. There's a racial wealth gap that exists in this country. It exists in this region, it exists in the Commonwealth, and it exists in Boston. And one way to reduce the racial wealth gap is to promote minority business development. The second thing is the how. The how focuses on, and I say minority business development for a very precise reason. Several of you have indicated it, and John, you touched on this. It's not only having corporations buy goods and services from minority-owned businesses, but large minority-owned businesses can buy goods and services from smaller minority-owned businesses. So that's very important. And another aspect of the how is that, accountability and money, mean a lot. And what I mean by that, if you really want to have effective supplier diversity programs, you need to set goals. You need to hold folks accountable for those goals. And if they meet or exceed those goals, you need to pay them. And the final thing is I think that, this is certainly a journey, but we don't have time to keep talking about it. Right now, the racial wealth gap that exists is going to last 333 years at the current, rate of spending by corporate America and the public sector. If the public sector and the corporate sector increase their spending 5 or 6 times, you can reduce the time to get to equity from 333 years to 15 years. I don't think any of us have 300 years, but we do probably have 15 years. So let's stop talking and start spending. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Peter, and I appreciate the partnership with GNE and with you personally. Quincy, I think we've heard this now a couple of times, this notion of accountability and metrics. I know that's something that you spoke to my team about at length and that Eastern takes quite seriously. I want to talk a little bit about how you determine the appropriate metrics for the bank, and then maybe reflect on what some of the appropriate metrics might be for this program, for this offering that we're trying to launch today.
Yeah, thanks, John. So what I first say at the start is it really doesn't matter how big or small your company is who's purchasing. Whether you're a small business and you think about your purchasing, we consider ourselves at Eastern, 110 locations and 23 billion, a pretty small bank at the end of the day, community bank at the end of the day, given that the big players are 1 trillion. And so, really the approach that we took here, first and foremost, you really can't set a goal until you understand your data. So the first thing you have to do is you really need to look at your spend, and that's what we did across the company. So we've been doing supplier diversity for a long time at Eastern, but we really sort of elevated our game back in 2017 in this idea of creating goals. And so what we did was we looked across all of our spend. We identified internally, as we knew it best, the minority spend that we could identify. And then we also, because we have a lot of complexity, a lot of different departments, we actually hired an outside diverse consultant who specializes in supplier diversity to help scrub our data as well, work with some other partners to help them identify businesses that were diverse in our existing spend today, like Peter and his team. So that was sort of the foundational piece that we did first. And then because, here at the bank, we have about 20 different divisions. What we did was we started with the 5 divisions that had the highest amount of spend, because that was sort of the logical place to start. How can we make the biggest impact? Start with who spends the most money. And we brought those divisions in to share the data with them. Here's what your spend looks like. Here is who you're working with today, and really had this discussion around where's opportunities for us to be able to make a difference in our community. And this really founded with the things you just heard from Peter around the wealth gap in Boston. And after that study came out, that really sort of helped us launch this and work together with BEI and Glenn Lloyd, who I know is on the call here today. And so from there, really, the couple key tenets we had was I took over the executive leadership of the program. So that's one of the things that I believe with any supplier diversity program at a company, no matter what size it is, it has to start at the top because it is going to be about changing behavior. And just to be clear, I never was involved in procurement in my entire career until I got involved in this. And so it's going to take effort at the top. A couple other things that I learned pretty early on, because I was pretty aggressive with setting a goal on where I wanted to be. And I think some of the things, Marianne talked about sort of when contracts come up, one of the things that I learned was we were going to have to be intentional and we were going to have to be consistent in the long term, because contracts are both a good and bad thing. One, it presents opportunity, but two, often, you have spend that's locked up for 2, 3, 4 years because you signed the contract before your initiative started. And so being very measured around your goals also helps you to be very intentional when those big opportunities come up, that you're really ensuring that you give and create a opportunity for diverse suppliers. So I'll pause there sort of on the goal piece, John, and I'm sure we'll circle back and I'll talk about some of the best practices we learned in executing that strategy. But my answer is start with the largest spend areas that you have and find ways to drive incremental spend. Sorry, one last thing that I forgot I wanted to mention. The other thing that I found in talking with all my division heads in other companies is people get hung up on, well, what can I control? Like what spend should count in terms of spend that I can actually move to a diverse supplier? I wanted to cut through all of this. Well, this should count and that shouldn't count and this should count and that shouldn't count conversation at Eastern. So we only exclude 3 things: taxes, utilities, and rent. Everything else is included. Again, I know that's a very different and more sort of probably aggressive approach than most companies take. But for me, it cut through the spending time arguing on whether something should be counted or not, and just focused on how do we move it? How do we change it? And so that's just some other best practices in terms of the measurement that we've launched.
I appreciate that, Quincy. And I think you mentioned something that is a driving feature of ABC for me, and that's the ability of AIM to speak to the top of the house. So amongst our members, 3,400 members, we have in our database 12 to 1,500 people who have the title CEO, owner, founder, partner. So they run their companies. And it's that ability to be able to reach out and speak to them directly. Marianne mentioned the 2 companies that she's working with, and in each instance, the boss is in the membership. And so we're able to communicate directly. And if things are perhaps not going as quickly or as smoothly, we can make those phone calls and make it it's almost like a constituent service program, in my opinion. One of my board members who I know is in the room is Anthony Samuels. And a lot of what we learned in designing the program, I learned in working with Anthony. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Anthony, but if you're willing to pop on and say a few words, I'd be grateful.
All right, appreciate it, John. Good morning to everybody. I just wanted to say something to Quincy Miller. I've been promoting him. I work on a few other boards and other groups that are trying to figure out how to diversify. I was in a presentation yesterday, 125 High Street, and somebody mentioned that we started our diversity program 2 years ago, and they were just starting to get companies in to interview. So I try to send people to Eastern Bank because they are committed to it and they know how to get it done. And so I just want to tell you, Quincy, I really appreciate what you guys do and what you've done for my company. But John, I just want to say, I think Quincy kind of mentioned it, a few other people mentioned it, Mary Ann mentioned it, is that it's the commitment. I mean, Quincy said how he's steering this program. And the thing is that, I mentioned this in the earlier session, is that I have seen the CEOs be committed to diversity, but I've seen it get chopped off at the level where we're dealing with procurement, or in my case, with facility management. And Quincy knows firsthand, him wanting to get it done and his facility people saying, not saying anything negative about them, just saying these guys have relationships with people that they've had developed over years. And it's not as simple as people think to break those relationships. And so I think having people committed at a higher level and make it trickle down to the decision makers is critical. And I just want to say again, thanks, Eastern Bank. And I see my buddy Youssef on this call, which was one of my first bankers with Eastern Bank. But I appreciate this and having Quincy, Mary Ann, and Betty on this panel.
Thanks, Anthony. Mary Ann, did you want to say something?
I did. I just wanted to say that, you know, sometimes I don't think that being in business for 33 years is that's a long time, right? The organizations that are on this call, the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council, the Business Equity Initiative that, you know, through the foundation that Glenn Lloyd runs, really, I have to say, I would not be in business today without these organizations. And we talk about, like, Anthony brought this up in my mind because, you know, it is not easy. And even when there is top down and you break through a contract to do a bid, I think that a lot of times medium-sized corporations, maybe because they haven't had the funds to investigate and develop what supplier diversity means to them. They're not looking at it as a business case where our communities have to have economic development, because who are going to be the ones buying their services and their products? It's a business economic case, right? But no matter what, it's so difficult because you don't put yourself in our shoes, where what our challenges are really, there may be an amazing program, but you're really in front of a buyer or an end user trying to get past their bias, trying to get past the stigma they have in their head of an MBE that is going to be a failure, that will never have funds to develop the business. So you not only have the challenge of presenting your value proposition, presenting the amazing references that you have, but you're trying to figure out who's in front of you and how you can use that in your plan, your marketing pitch, because we often have to pivot to decide, you know, wow, I've got to get past. And in our community, you know, we literally go like this. We've got to get past this first so they can see who our organization is. And that is what I think this one-on-one business connect is trying to do. And, you know, we talk about the challenges of funds and money and meeting business organizations and all of, you know, we're here for that. But I think sometimes we haven't had a platform to say, you know, what we're really dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So this is great.
So Betty, I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about metrics. Obviously, as an investor, you have to look at an awful lot of things when you decide to invest in a company. When you think about metrics in this space, what types of things do you think about?
Well, one, at Boston Impact, one of the things we're looking for is how does this business interact with our supply chain, right? So even though most of our businesses are businesses owned by people of color, we want them to buy from other businesses owned by women and people of color. So that is one of the ways that you continue to build, economic opportunity and prosperity. So that is something that we actually foster amongst our own portfolio companies. But in the end, we want them to have opportunities to contract with larger businesses, right? That is the goal. So some of the things I spend a lot of personal time on are making introductions for those businesses to whether it's other corporations, other nonprofits that are in a position to buy from our businesses, as well as organizations like yours, right, that have access to top decision makers so that those introductions can come to some fruition. And, the challenge, as you've heard from Marianne and others, is even though we may be making introductions, sometimes those fizzle out and you don't know exactly why. So I think one of the things that AIM Business Connect in its efforts to do this work can also foster is a feedback loop, a constant feedback loop to understand why that business didn't move forward in some way. Is it that there was lack of preparation? Is it there was a mismatch in the types of services that the buyer was looking for? Is it lack of capital, right? So I think it's really important to understand why, because time and time again, the introductions made often, go flat, and we are in a position to support our business, right? Either through technical assistance or other supports, but we don't know exactly why. So it's really important to keep that loop coming back. And I just wanted to point a couple of things out, because these are some real barriers that our businesses face. Marianne alluded to some of them, but I'll just give you a little bit more context. So a lot of businesses come to us for financing in order to grow. And we have a few of them actually on the call here. And part of the issue is that they are getting contracting opportunities, but they don't have the line of credit or the working capital to actually execute that contract effectively. And partly it's because of the contract terms. It's because payment is made 60, 90 days out, or it's because they're not given an upfront retainer for inventory or a deposit for it. So you need massive amounts of cash, right, in order to even execute the contract. So something to think about as you're doing this work, and more on the buyer side, is how can you look at your contract terms to make it more accessible for some of these smaller businesses? So for example, we're providing at Boston Impact the line of credit so that that business can cover payroll so that it can execute the contract, or a line of credit or working capital so that it can buy inventory in order to deliver on the contract. So really important, because these are things that some of our buyers can actually develop. And in fact, municipalities and the government contracting side, right, have funds available to basically bridge the business in order for it to be able to deliver on contracts. The other thing is contracting requirements, right? Making them really transparent, plain English, like what is required to actually get this bid, right? If I have to submit a bid, giving context and maybe offering an example of what an effective winning bid can look like. Because honestly, I'll just tell you, a lot of RFPs that you see who have I'm a lawyer and I'm like, I don't even know what this is saying. I think, putting some more transparency creates more access and accessibility, right, to these opportunities. And then the last thing I'll mention about two more things I want to say is there's amazing organizations on this call right now. We have to use them and leverage them, right? Because the other issue is these businesses coming through us, right? They're coming through networks that are intentionally supporting entrepreneurs of color or women. But they don't have the access to the mainstream organizations like yours, right? The majority business organizations. So you actually have to use us as intermediaries. So I just encourage you, John, and the team and all the businesses on this call is also leverage the BECMAs, the Amplify Latinxes, the FBEs, right? To also connect into AIM, because it's through those intermediaries that you're going to actually meet many of these businesses, and they're the ones doing the technical assistance, the supports, the introductions and connections. And then the last thing that's super important, you all talked about commitment at the top, but the execution is at the middle. And Quincy said it, Marianne said it, right? We've got to get that middle layer that actually makes the decisions to get on the bus. And I'll be very honest, there are negative views, right? We hear this all the time. There's this presumption of incompetence and lack of capacity to perform when it comes to businesses owned by people of color. It just is there. It is an unconscious bias. Sometimes it's a conscious bias. But we've got to address that. And some of that is through training. Some of that is through, intentional goal setting, tying goals to performance and compensation. So it's something we all have to work on as we go through this transition, right, of incorporating MBE spend.
Thanks, Betty. So many good points there. I do want to call on one of our partners, and Rob Williams, who's with the State Supplier Diversity Office. I will say, in the course of my career, I've been peripherally involved with the Supplier Diversity Office when I was at the Mass Office of Business Development and other positions that I've held over time. I'm so impressed with what SDO has been doing in terms of providing web resources and database resources. If you haven't stumbled across their site, you should make it a point to do so later today. Rob, I'd love to give you an opportunity to plug what you do and how you do it, and as one of our trusted partners, give you an opportunity to speak. So take it away. Oh, nice background. Look at that.
I like that. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. John, great to be here this morning. And Karen and Chris, thanks for all your great work that you're doing with AIM. And the Supply Diversity Office, we join you in this work. My name is Rob Williams, everyone. I'm the Director of Diverse and Small Business Engagement. I have a number of my colleagues on the call this morning. I also want to just give a shout out to Betty and the work that she's doing, and Quincy over at Eastern Bank. I know my colleague Glenn's on the call as well. And Marianne, 30 years in the business. Yes, you believe me, you've done a great work. And then Anthony, great work with Done Right. What we're doing at the Supply Diversity Office, I think this is really key. We're a new agency. I think we need to make sure folks know that. We became an independent agency back in January of last year. So we're being very intentional. A lot of this work really came out of Amplify Latinx, BECMA, the Greater New England Minority Supply Development Council, and their advocacy as well. So we're being very intentional about trying to eliminate these barriers of entry. And that's really what, I think Betty hit it on the, right on the point there, is that, these, filling out a procurement can be challenging. So we've developed a resource page, and Quincy, we really want to get Eastern Bank's information out there as well. So we really want to have, financial and technical resources so our certified vendors are ready and able to take on these contracts and be successful. Now, what I do want to point out is that one of the things that we want business owners to realize that you have to know the playbook. And, different, the federal government has their platforms, the state, we have our platform, which is Combis. So we have trainings involved, and, everything is digital, right? So unless you're up on these platforms and you're aware of how to access them and be successful, it's going to be a challenge. So we really need you to reach out to our office so we can get you involved with these trainings so you can be successful. And Betty mentioned something as well about building capacity for our business owners. So one of the things that we're doing is, as we look at these contracts, right, like when can we get, whenever possible, to get subcontractors and MBEs in the room together and talk about teaming or doing some joint ventures, and then taking that to the procurement officer or, to the buyer and say, okay, how about taking a look at the, at these two companies as a whole, and then trying to drive it that way. So we're really trying to be just creative and innovative about addressing these items. And now we're also developing a supply diversity hub. And you'll hear more information about this coming down the pipe, where we're developing basically a platform where we can have buyers and our vendors come together and actually do some matchmaking, pushing out these procurement opportunities and really building these partnerships. So again, I just want you to know that we're being very intentional. Bill McAvoy, our executive director, has really just working closely with the Governor Baker, just trying to make these opportunities happen. We have over 3,800 certified business owners. Wanda Colon D'Angelo, who has up our certification area. So again, we encourage you, if you're not certified, to reach out to us. If you're working with business owners out of state, who need to be certified with us. We, again, we have cross certification partners with the council, the city of Boston. And again, we believe it does come down to trust. We want our certified vendors trusted and given opportunities. I applaud you, John, the great work that you're doing over at AIM. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate everything that you're doing. And it's sometimes tough to be in a state agency, but I love the hustle. I love the way you are, engaging in this work. It's noticeably different than anything I've seen before. I have a note here from my team that Leora Stone from Precision. Let me try that again. From Precision Engineering, I would like to ask a question. So, Leora, take it away.
Morning. I had a question. I put it in the chat, and basically, large corporations have a very high expense, right? So any buyers are always trying to mitigate risk, because any kind of risk, any kind of losses are very expensive to them, more so than even to small businesses. And so that's part of the bias that kind of exists when you're trying to break in. So can the panel discuss, and actually Betty and Rob kind of started to go down this road. Can you talk a little bit about specific action items that suppliers can take to help break into bigger companies and show them that you're understanding their risk and you're ready to address those risks?
Ready?
So I'm not sure if this gets exactly to your question, Leora, but there was one smaller cleaning company, for example, that came to me looking for help with responding to an RFP, and it was actually for Polar Park, and it was complicated, wasn't sure exactly how to price it. And it was a very small company. So the suggestion to her was to partner with a larger cleaning company that already had large contracts. And it was an opportunity for her to learn, right, how to engage in this business. She would be a subcontractor to this larger cleaning contract. And that match was made by CWE, actually, Center for Women in Enterprise. They ended up getting the contract, right? So part of it was risk mitigation, right? Because the smaller contractor can learn, can know how to appropriately price, can get trained, right? So it's sort of learning from the big sister or the big brother, and then now is in a position to bid themselves on bigger, opportunities. So, and that happened with one contract, right? So the opportunity to scale up these businesses is really significant, even with just one opportunity. But if it's got to be the right match, right? So that's a little bit of the I think the risk mitigation that I see happening. If I were a larger corporation, right, saying, oh, I see that you're building that contracting capacity because you're pairing up with other subcontractors. So that's just one way I've seen it done.
Thanks, Ben. Quincy?
No, I think Marianne. Go ahead, Marianne.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So, my world is supply chain, right? And everything that's been going on since the pandemic, the stress globally around the world in supply chain is incredible. And it's the perfect time for diverse and small businesses to really approach these bigger organizations, because